The battle hadn't even started, yet the middle was already burning with tension. For nearly 20 years, Israel had been facing enemies who wanted to erase it. It was surrounded by countries like Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. They all promised to wipe the Jewish state off the map, and those threats didn't fade with time. They spread across the region, fueled by old anger from the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. It was a conflict that had already left deep scars on both sides. Then, in May 1967, that conflict finally shattered. On the 16th of May, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser made his first move. It was not with bullets, but with demand. He ordered the United Nations peacekeepers to leave the Sinai Peninsula immediately. These UN forces had been there since the 1956 Suez Crisis to keep peace between Israel and Egypt. But the UN gave in without resistance, and the space they left behind was quickly filled by more than 100,000 Egyptian troops, thousands of tanks and heavy weapons, all pointing directly at Israel. But Nasser wasn't done yet. Soon after, he closed the Straits of Tiran, cutting off Israel's vital access to the Red Sea. For Israel, this was a harsh economic isolation, and to many, it looked like a clear act of war. Across the Arab world, people celebrated Nasser's bold moves. In cities like Cairo and Damascus, crowds cheered on the streets, believing the war against Israel had started. Even Syria and Jordan joined in, signing military deals with Egypt and moving their armies toward Israel. Arab radio stations blasted threats, calling this the end of Israel. But Israel was on the verge of panic, because the country had less than 3 million people, surrounded on nearly every side, with nowhere to run. Fear gripped the country. People believed this was the end, and they started preparing for it. But while the world expected Israel to fold under the pressure, it was quietly planning something bold, something that would change everything. So, what exactly did they do? How did they pull off one of the most devastating air assaults in modern military history, and in just a few hours? The sun just started to rise over the Mediterranean Sea. It all looked calm until at exactly 7:45 a.m. on June 5, 1967, Israeli fighter jets started slicing low over the waves. They flew so low over the water that enemy radar couldn't detect them. This surprise attack was called Operation Focus, and it became one of the deadliest and most precise airstrikes in modern history. In just 2 hours, Israel destroyed nearly 300 Egyptian aircraft, with most of them still sitting hopelessly on the ground. They bombed the runways first, trapping the planes on the ground, just as planned. Then they circled back, taking out the control tower, radar systems, and hangars. So, by the time Egypt realized what was happening, their air force, which was once called the strongest in the Arab world, was now almost gone. But it wasn't only Egypt, because after a while, Israel launched similar strikes against Syria, Jordan, and Iraq's air forces. In less than 24 hours, Israel had gained total control of the skies. But air dominance wasn't enough. Israel still faced enemies on every border, and the real was just beginning. And now the question was, if they can rule the air, what would they do on the ground? As the enemy's air power was completely gone, Israel now had something priceless: the freedom to move on the ground without looking over their shoulders. Now they knew that they had no threat of bombers, and no jets to dodge. It was their perfect chance to roll out their tanks and troops fast, so they made their move to the south first. Israeli forces pushed deep into the Sinai Peninsula, heading straight for Egypt's massive army. Egyptian tanks were powerful, there was no doubt, but the sudden airstrikes shattered their communication. Many commanders were left scrambling, unsure of where to send their troops, and confusion spread quickly through the ranks. But Israeli units didn't stop their movements. They crossed the desert at lightning speed and finally reached Egypt's western edge,